patients weren't insane. They were antennas. Just the one sentence sat buried in a flood-damaged letter, and it changed everything we thought we knew about Briar Glen Institute. What if the screaming in those walls wasn't madness but signal? In this video, we uncover the erased history of a facility so secret it rewrote memories. A Cold War black site where science crossed into the supernatural. Hidden recordings, classified rituals, and a child labelled Subject L9. She didn't just hear voices. She spoke languages no human ever recorded. What you're about to hear has been buried for over 50 years and someone didn't want it to surface. But it has. And it's listening. It started with a sealed envelope, no return address, no markings, just a single line scrawled in fading ink. Do not open unless you remember the sound. Inside was a brittle letter soaked in age and desperation signed by a man who vanished in 1973. Dr. Elias Crane, former director of the Briar Glen Institute. His writing was frantic, like someone racing against something invisible. He described unauthorized experiments conducted deep beneath a facility that officially never existed. He warned of auditory thresholds that breach cognitive barriers and referenced Room 12A, which he called the listening chamber, a place where sound was weaponized against the human mind. But what struck hardest wasn't what he said. It was what he claimed they heard. And that's where everything begins. Because according to Crane, the girl heard it first. If you can hear it too, it's already too late. That was the first line of the letter, and I haven't slept properly since reading it. The envelope came with no postmark, no date, no return name, just that one haunting sentence and a yellowed stack of declassified notes stamped with a symbol I didn't recognize. The seal read ONAC, and beneath it the words Occult Neuroacoustic Commission. At first I thought it was some elaborate ARG or art project, maybe viral marketing for a horror podcast. But then I saw the original files. Not scans, not transcripts. Real files, cracked folders, still dusty photos stapled to blood-stained incident reports, and pages that looked like they'd been exposed to heat moisture and something else. Something wrong. The records all pointed to one location, Briar Glen Institute, a now erased mental research facility in rural Pennsylvania. Not just abandoned, erased. It never showed up on any map after 1974. I searched land records. Nothing. Cross-checked federal databases. Nothing. It's as if someone vacuumed the place out of existence. But the letter said one thing very clearly. The silence wasn't an accident. It was the containment. And that's what led me to Room 12A. They sealed it twice, once with concrete and once with memory. That's what the second page of the letter claimed. It described how Briar Glen Institute was decommissioned not through demolition, but through deliberate erasure. The facility wasn't just shut down, it was scrubbed from every registry aerial map and military archive. The exact coordinates had been blacked out, and former employees were reportedly subjected to experimental memory redaction protocols, likely a side project from Culture or something worse. But one survivor, Crane, slipped through the cracks. He wrote that the institute still exists beneath the foundation of what is now a wildlife reserve surrounded by signs warning of unstable ground and sinkhole risk. Convenient. But here's what really chilled me: the blueprints. Buried in the envelope was a floor plan dated 1963 labelled Listening Ring, Approved Layout Phase 4. Every room was named like it was part of a cathedral choral antechamber scripture vault echo dormitory. This wasn't a hospital. This was a ritual site masquerading as science. And according to the annotations in Crane's frantic handwriting, something inside those walls never stopped humming. The closer I got to the foundation sites, the more my ears rang, like they were adjusting to a pressure I couldn't explain. But I wasn't the first to feel it. The letter made it clear someone else heard it first, and they never made it back. Don't bring metal near the soil. That line was scribbled in the margins, almost like an afterthought, but it haunted me more than the rest. According to Crane's notes, something beneath Briar Glen Institute interfered with magnetic fields, especially anything made of iron, copper or gold. He called it a harmonic disruption zone and said it wasn't natural. Devices shorted out, compass needles spun, and when one technician brought a rusted nail too close to the sub-basement wall, he started screaming about voices buried in static. The note said his ears bled for 6 straight minutes before he collapsed. Crane didn't call this place a lab. He called it a misused chapel for things we shouldn't hear. Every account mentioned the same feeling pressure in the skull dreams, filled with rhythmic clicking and the unmistakable sense of being overheard even in total silence. And then there was the girl, subject L9, the only child ever admitted into the facility. He never used her real name, just L9. According to the report, she arrived already humming melodies no one had taught her. She didn't speak for 3 months. Then one night she looked directly at the observation glass and whispered, "I know what's under your floor." That's when the incident log stops and the redacted pages begin. The forest surrounding the Briar Glen site was too quiet. No birdsong, no wind. Just that heavy, unnatural stillness that makes your instincts twitch. I followed the coordinates hidden in Crane's blueprint, hiking 5 miles into restricted land until I found it a patch of ground that refused to grow anything bordered by rusted fence posts and a concrete hatch half swallowed by dirt. The hatch wasn't locked, just waiting. Inside, the air hit me like old breath, heavy, damp, and beneath it all a low-frequency hum too low to be mechanical, too steady to be natural. I didn't realise I was descending until my flashlight beam caught the first faded sign on the wall, level 2. Auditory observation. Something was down there, and I wasn't alone. Because the deeper I went, the more I realised. Someone had reopened room 12A. There's no dust down here. That was the first thought that hit me as my boots stepped onto the tiled floor beneath the hatch. After decades of abandonment, the corridor was clean. Not just undisturbed, sterile. The walls were lined with soundproofing foam, mostly decomposed, but some patches looked oddly intact. My flashlight flickered as I passed a cracked observation window, and that's when I saw it. A child's handprint smeared in something dark, too dark for rust, too fresh for time. The hallway bent slightly, like it had been designed to confuse orientation. Every few feet I passed industrial speakers bolted to the walls, all angled inward toward a central room labelled simply 12A. Crane's notes called this room the nexus of auditory convergence. But it looked more like an interrogation chamber. One chair, a half circle of rusted recording equipment, and wires that snaked into the concrete itself. There were no lights, no microphones, just a single black cone suspended from the ceiling by piano wire pointing directly at the chair. I didn't sit. I didn't breathe too loudly, because something about the air in that room felt aware. Like sound wasn't just heard, it was watching. And beneath the hum, I thought I heard breathing. We never taught her that song. That line kept circling my thoughts as I moved deeper past room 12A. I found a side archive labelled Cognitive Echo Logs, a vault of decaying reel-to-reel tapes, each marked with dates between 1962 and 1971. Most were too warped to play. But tape number 47 was still intact and already loaded into the machine. I hit play. What came through the headphones didn't feel like sound. It felt like presence. A girl's voice, soft and melodic, began humming a tune that twisted the air around me. Notes bending in impossible ways, like the melody was climbing in reverse. Then her voice shifted. She whispered in a language that doesn't exist. Syllables like clicks, tones, and backwards phonemes, followed by an unmistakable phrase in perfect English, "I'm still inside." My mouth went dry. This wasn't a recording of a girl trapped in a room. It was a recording of something using her voice. The hum returned, rising slightly in pitch, as if responding to my heartbeat. And in that moment, I wasn't sure whether I was listening to the past or whether something in the room was listening to me. Because the last few seconds of the tape was silence, followed by my name. The architecture didn't match the blueprints. That's when I realized something was deeply wrong with the structure of Briar Glen. According to Crane's original floor plan, room 12A should have been the lowest accessible chamber. But just behind a false panel, hidden behind a maintenance locker, I found a spiral stairwell carved directly into the bedrock, descending into total darkness. No lighting, no rails, just a crude warning etched into the stone not below 34 hertz. My flashlight dimmed as I stepped down each footfall, echoing strangely as if the acoustics of the tunnel were warping sound itself. About 50 feet down, I reached a narrow antechamber where the walls pulsed slightly, like they were breathing. There was no power, but my phone lit up, not with service, with a waveform. A live waveform. Something was emitting low-frequency vibration, steady and intelligent. I raised my phone, and the waveform spiked. Then a voice, not through the speaker, but through the walls, spoke a sentence that froze me. "You're late." I turned, expecting anyone, but there was nothing. Only a mirror bolted to the far wall, warped and stained. And in that mirror, for just a split second, I wasn't alone. That mirror didn't reflect light, it reflected memory. From the moment I saw my own face flicker like static in that warped glass, something shifted. The blueprints were lies. The recordings were invitations. And Briar Glen wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. Because the further I went, the more I realized they didn't build the Institute to cure madness. They built it to contain what listens below. And now, it listens to me. The door wasn't there before. That was the first thing I noticed when I turned back to leave the stairwell and saw it. A door matte black with no handle, no hinges, no frame. Just there, fused into the rock as if it had always been part of the mountain. I hadn't seen it coming down. My flashlight dimmed again. My phone went dead. The waveform vanished. And in that silence I realized something profoundly wrong. I couldn't hear myself breathing. No echo, no heartbeat, just nothing. Like the space around me had swallowed all vibration. I pressed my hand to the door and instantly pulled back. It was warm. Not metallic, not stone, but warm like flesh. A low thrumming began inside my skull, vibrating behind my eyes. I staggered back, but the stairwell behind me was gone. Just a blank wall now, and the mirror was pulsing. I screamed. No sound. I pounded the walls. No echo. And somewhere behind that door, the girl's humming started again, only now it was layered with hundreds of voices, all humming the same impossible tune. I wasn't lost. I was being kept. And something was deciding what I heard next. It mimicked my voice. That was the moment I knew I had crossed into something that wasn't just ancient, it was aware. I turned towards the pulsing mirror, and my reflection didn't move. Not immediately. It lagged. Then it smiled just slightly before I did. My skin went cold. I whispered, "Who are you?" And the voice that came back was mine, but older, hoarser, like it had been trapped underground for decades. "I remember you," it said. I stepped back. The mirror rippled like water, and the humming swelled, no longer musical, but mechanical, like a transmission forced through bone. The walls behind me started to shift, not crumble, reform. Like the architecture was responding to me, mapping itself around my fear. That's when I saw the child, standing in the far corner, pale, silent, eyes wide and unblinking. Her mouth moved with the hum, but no sound came out. I blinked and she was gone, but her shadow remained stretching unnaturally long across the ceiling, crawling toward the mirror. I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't dreaming. I was being recorded, rewritten, and played back wrong. "You're not where you think you are." That phrase appeared smeared across the mirror, in a substance I swear was still wet. I didn't write it. I hadn't even touched the glass. But it was written in my handwriting. My real handwriting from old journals I hadn't seen in years. Suddenly, everything about the Institute's layout stopped making sense. Hallways led back to themselves. Stairs looped endlessly. Rooms rearranged. And every surface, every wall panel and floor tile began to reflect me. Not in real time, but in moments I hadn't lived yet. I watched myself run, scream, beg. I watched myself break. The mirror pulsed brighter now, almost like a strobe, and with each flicker, I saw the girl again closer every time. But something had changed. Her face now looked like mine. Not metaphorically, literally. Her eyes, my eyes. Her voice, my voice. I touched the mirror again, and this time it didn't resist. My hand went through, and for a moment I felt her hand wrap around mine gently. She whispered, "Don't go back. That's where the forgetting starts." I tried to pull away. I couldn't, because what was on the other side wasn't her. It was a version of me that had never left. There was no mirror anymore, only a door made of memory, and I had already stepped halfway through. What waited inside wasn't a room, but a recreation, a perfect reconstruction of my childhood bedroom, down to the torn poster on the left wall and the exact scent of pine from a candle my mother used to light. But this wasn't nostalgia. This was bait, and behind that innocence, something ancient was watching, waiting to be remembered. What happens when a place doesn't just trap you, but replaces you? The answer came in the form of a voice that sounded like mine, whispering a truth too heavy to carry alone, because what I was about to see next would rewrite everything I believed about where I came from and what had been done to me. This isn't a memory, it's a replacement. That sentence echoed in my head as I stood in the false replica of my childhood bedroom, now buried beneath layers of dirt and time under the Institute. The details were too perfect, down to the scratch on the third floorboard where I once hid a comic book. But I hadn't told anyone about that. Ever. I whispered my own name, and the room answered back. Not an echo, but a response whispered from inside the walls in a voice that aged with every repetition. My face stared back at me from framed photos that had never existed. In one, I was smiling beside a man I didn't recognize. In another, I was older, sunken-eyed, holding the girl's hand like I belonged there. A stack of journals sat beside the bed, all signed with my name, all in my handwriting, filled with events that hadn't happened yet. Or maybe they had, and I had forgotten. I flipped through one and saw the words, "You agreed to stay. You signed in blood." That's when I realized this wasn't just a trap. It was a contract. And I had broken it. Reality didn't bend here, it shattered. I opened one of the drawers beside the fake bed and found a Polaroid camera still warm to the touch. I instinctively snapped a photo of the room, but what developed wasn't what I saw. It showed me asleep in the bed, and behind me, crouched in the corner like an animal in prayer, was her, the girl from the mirror, smiling with her mouth open too wide, too long. I dropped the photo, and it kept burning in my mind like a brand. The journals now rearranged themselves pages, flipping violently to a date that didn't exist. March 0th, year null. I read a line scrawled in red ink. You are not the first to forget. You are only the latest to remember. The wallpaper began to peel, revealing layer after layer of names carved into the walls behind it. My name was there dozens of times in different handwriting, some older than the wood itself. This room wasn't built for comfort. It was a chamber of recursion, a looping trap that fed on memory identity and the arrogance of trying to escape it. The Institute didn't record trauma, it replicated it. I found a hallway behind the false room, its walls lined with mirrors, each one fogged from the inside, as if something had breathed against the glass. As I passed each mirror, lit up with scenes I'd never lived, but all starring me. In one, I was restrained on a gurney surrounded by men in lead aprons, injecting something black into my spine. In another, I was inside a burning corridor smiling as the fire licked the ceiling and a child screamed my name from the other side. None of these memories were mine until I started remembering them. The mirrors didn't reflect, they projected. They were feeding me false pasts, and my mind was accepting them like hungry teeth, snapping shut. One mirror showed me holding a scalpel, laughing in the operating theatre. Another showed me as a patient, drooling eyes glazed whispering numbers into a tape recorder. This is who you were, a voice said behind the glass, or maybe it's who you'll become. That's when I understood the Institute wasn't haunted by spirits, it was haunted by futures, and I was becoming one. The further I went, the less human I felt. In the lowest sub-level, unlisted on any blueprint, I found a room colder than logic, lit by a pulsing strobe that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. The walls were covered in patient ID tags, hundreds, maybe thousands each with my name. Some were recent, dated within weeks. Others went back over a century. One tag had dried blood on it. One was burnt at the edges. And one had my handwriting on the back, a message scrawled in panic, break the loop. Don't trust the exit. I turned around and saw a doorway that hadn't been there seconds ago, flickering like static between real and not. From inside, a voice whispered with perfect familiarity, not imitation, but perfect my own voice, repeating my thoughts before I even had them. You're not walking halls, it said. You're walking yourself. That's when I saw the final file left for me labelled only admission, vote 1000. Original copy. The photo stapled inside wasn't of a patient. It was a staff badge. Mine, smiling, happy, before I forgot who I was supposed to be. They never meant to cure anyone. They meant to copy them. Inside the final corridor, I discovered what looked like a morgue, but every drawer was warm. Some pulsed, some twitched. Each one labelled with a different version of me. Patient Echo 1, Echo 2, Echo 13. And the last, Echo 0. A screen beside it blinked with a message, stability reached, integration complete. That's when I saw it myself, but not quite. It stepped forward with my memories, my voice, even my scars, but none of my hesitation. And it smiled with the kind of peace only someone utterly controlled can achieve. They fixed me, it said. You're the glitch. I stumbled back as alarms began to howl, not as a warning, but as a welcome. Because I wasn't the patient. I was the failed prototype, and now they didn't need me anymore. My replacement had already signed the release form, and the door behind me was gone. Just a mirror now, and behind it every version of me that never escaped. The worst part isn't what they did to me, it's that no one will ever believe it. The clinic burned down 3 days later, an electrical fault, they said. Files gone staff untraceable. And the land quietly sold to a biotech firm whose name doesn't appear on any public registry. But I remember everything. Every test, every lie, every mirror. And now I'm not sure if the voice inside my head is mine anymore, or theirs, because something still speaks to me at 3:17 a.m. Not a memory, a directive. The final sequence begins with what they left behind and what's already waking up in others. I can't look at my reflection anymore because it sometimes blinks when I don't. After the fire, I moved 3 states away, changed my name, deleted every trace of my past. But they still find me. Not in the way you'd expect, not agents or doctors or phone calls in the night. No, it's worse. Strangers on the street finish my sentences. My dreams are no longer private. The same numbers repeat everywhere, license plates, clocks, receipts, 317. A child I've never met whispered my full name in a crowded supermarket. I haven't told anyone, because who would believe a story this fractured? But I know deep down the experiment never ended. They just let it loose into the wild. I am the seed now, a walking variable. And the more I try to forget, the clearer it becomes. What they placed inside me isn't fading. It's learning. It's watching. Becoming something else. Every time I close my eyes, I return to that room beneath the facility, the one with no official blueprint where time bent in ways I still can't explain. My body may have escaped, but my mind is shackled to that place. Shadows stretch longer than they should. Static hums in places without power. Sometimes I hear voices speaking backwards, as if time is running in reverse just for me. The doctors told us we'd forget the side effects. But what if the side effects remembered us? I haven't slept a full night in years, not because of fear, but because my dreams are no longer mine. They show me faces I've never seen, but feel intimately familiar. A man with glass eyes whispering coordinates. A girl mouthing my name with blood running from her ears. These aren't dreams. They're warnings, echoes. Proof that something followed us out, something stitched into our thoughts. And it's not done yet. The experiment was never about controlling minds. It was about seeding infection across generations hidden inside memory itself. And now, we're all just hosts in a system that never ends. It wasn't just the facility that changed us. It was what we carried out inside our heads. Some of us started drawing symbols. We'd never learned spirals and patterns that seemed to move when no one was watching. Others vanished entirely, like Adam, who left his apartment, unlocked phone on the table, dinner still warm. Gone. No trace. And then came the dreams, identical across survivors, as if we were tuning into the same forbidden frequency. We've tried to warn others, but recordings erase themselves. Emails unsend. Words dissolve mid-sentence. Something is actively protecting itself. One survivor bit his own tongue off before speaking in his sleep again. Another tore the wiring from his walls, screaming about the root protocol crawling through his outlets. Whatever the program unleashed, it doesn't want exposure, it wants evolution. Every day it finds new pathways, screens static children's drawings. I once thought madness was the end. Now I know it's just the translation phase, the way it makes room in your psyche. We were test subjects, now we're seeders. And the infection. It's airborne, but not in the way you think it's carried by story memory, attention itself. Even now, years later, I flinch when I hear that specific 3-note hum, low rising flat, as if some forgotten system deep inside me still recognizes the signal. My phone vibrates at 3:16 a.m. every month. No notifications, no missed calls, just static if I answer. I've moved twice, changed my number, left the internet behind, but the patterns find me. They don't need Wi-Fi. They're in the rhythm of flickering lights, the pause between heartbeats, the blank space after someone forgets what they were about to say. One former technician described it as a cognitive footprint, an imprint the program left on our neurology that now acts like a beacon constantly syncing with something bigger. The deeper you understand it, the more it notices you. That's why I never say the full project name aloud anymore. I've burned every document, every journal page, every trace except this recording. Not to expose it, but to warn you if you're still watching. If you feel something staring back through the screen, do not replay this video. Do not seek answers. Curiosity is how it enters. And belief is how it spreads. There's one final thing I need you to understand, and it's not a twist or a scare tactic. It's a fact. Ever since, the incident survivors haven't just reported trauma or memory gaps. They've experienced shared hallucinations, bleeding dreams, synchronized nosebleeds, and voices that finish their sentences in another room. One man described watching his daughter walk backward into a static-filled wall and vanish, except she was never born. Another carved the same geometric spiral into his own skin every night while asleep. These aren't symptoms. They're signals, ripples from something still unfolding. Because once you encounter it, once your perception has been stretched, broken and rewired, it never really stops. Your reality may resume, but something stays behind to watch, to echo, to wait. And one day something else will answer. That's the part no one tells you. The final infection isn't fear or madness, it's silence. A silence so deep it rearranges the world around you just to hear what you'll whisper back. So now you know what they buried, but not what it's still becoming. If any part of this story made the hairs on your neck stand up or stirred that uneasy feeling in your gut, you're not alone. That sensation, it's your instincts trying to warn you something doesn't add up, and maybe it never did. We built this reality like a shelter, but stories like this expose the cracks. If you've ever felt like the world blinked and came back just a little, share your theory below. What do you think really happened? I read every comment, and some of your thoughts are more terrifying than the story itself. Save this video in case it disappears. Subscribe now before the next one hits, because next time the thing knocking might already be inside.